Good afternoon, and thank you all once again for spending the last several days together here at the 22nd Annual Border Energy Forum. It's my privilege today to introduce President Vicente Fox. Born and raised on the family ranch in Guanajuato, Mexico, President Fox studied business administration at the Universidad Iberoamericana before receiving an advanced degree in management skills from Harvard Business School. After graduating from Universidad Iberoamericana, President Fox joined Coca-Cola as a route supervisor. He quickly worked his way up in the company and became president of their operations in Mexico and over all of Latin America. In 1995, President Fox was elected governor of the state of Guanajuato, winning more than 2 votes for every one of his opponents. Under his leadership, Guanajuato became the 5th most impactful state economy in the entire country of Mexico. And the state of Guanajuato outperformed the rest of the country in a variety of economic measures. Elected president in 2000, President Fox was the first candidate from an opposition party ever to be elected since 1920. And serving as president until 2006, his administration oversaw the creation of more than 1.4 million jobs and helped maintain and promote economic and political stability. Since leaving office, President Fox has devoted himself to Centro Fox, a group that promotes the advancement and study of democracy both in Mexico and throughout Latin America. President Fox has also led efforts to promote social and economic advancement while encouraging the Mexican people to have a sense of commitment to solving the issue of poverty. Please join me in welcoming President Fox to the Border Energy Forum.
Muchísimas gracias. Muy buen provecho. Hablamos en español porque Jorge P. habla español y está muy cerca de los mexicanos y las mexicanas, no solo en el estado de Texas, sino en buena parte de los Estados Unidos. Y I want to start by thanking him, George P., for this invitation. I think it is a great opportunity for us to have a dialogue, so I will just come in with some ideas to provoke maybe your questions, your thoughts, or your comments. I think this Energy Forum is a great idea. And why? Because energy in an economy is the fuel that fuels development. And I would think that the purpose of the profound Mexican energy reform has as its ultimate purpose to provide manufacturing and other sectors of the Mexican economy with abundant energy at competitive prices. If that is the case, and if that is what we get, we will see the Mexican economy moving a couple of percentage growth points on gross domestic product. Certainly, this could be the lost piece of the chain that has limited Mexico's growth to levels of 2.5% in the last 30 years. And presidents from the presidents from the PAN have come through in different administrations, and yet Mexico has not been able to average better than 2.5%. I think, and I am convinced, that this reform will do the job, will move the Mexican economy to levels of 5, 6, sustainable growth in domestic product. And as you know, when domestic product works, we have more jobs, we have more income, and we have less poverty and increased opportunities for all Mexicans. By the way, it's a great news that today the balance on the exchange of people, migrants coming to the States or going back from the States to Mexico, now is balanced and it's becoming favorable to Mexico. More people is coming back than the people that is coming in. And that's why NAFTA has been such an important instrument. Because when NAFTA started 20 years ago, the gap between income on the Mexican side versus the US side was a 10-to-1. No doubt then that the incentives were strong. And if you would make $1 on the Mexican side, and by swimming and crossing the river, you would then make 10, most everybody wanted to do that. Who would not? Today, after 20 years of NAFTA, almost one generation, the ratio is now down to 5-to-1. Still, comparing with Canada, where it's 1-to-1, we have a long way to go. But I am convinced that in the next 25 years, one generation, that will even up a 1-to-1 dollar on the border. And it's not just a forecast. There's many people, many leaders working on making that happen. People like George P., people like each one of you leaders, we're trying to build bridges. We don't want walls. Walls don't work. They have never worked. They never worked in China, the Chinese wall. They never worked in Berlin, the Berlin Wall. And this one won't work either. It's bridges what we have to build, and that's what this Energy Forum is all about. Meeting, networking, US side corporate world in energy with Mexican corporate world in Mexico. The reform, unfortunately, our democracy and the conflictive situation among political parties, among opposition and government, between different branches of power, has limited the look for this reform. As you are well aware, it took 18 years to get this reform approved. It was three administrations. President Cedillo presented the reform, President Fox did one, President Calderon, same thing. And it was up until President Peña's very fortunate maneuvering, very strong capacity to deal with this diversity of thought that we have in Mexico. We finally got the reforms. We're 18 years late. If that reform would have been approved 18 years behind, believe me, that situation in Mexico would be completely different. But obstacles have to be overcome, and that's what President Peña did. There is one advantage on being late, only one advantage on being late: to learn from others' experience, to learn for what was done wrong, to learn about success stories. And that's exactly what happened with this reform. I think it's not only profound, it's extremely well structured. It attends to most of the problems, and of course, it focuses on the opportunities. As you can see, this reform has contents coming from the experiences in Peru and Colombia. And notice, please, that Peru and Colombia, after their energy reform, they moved from 3-4% average growth to 6 and 7 or plus % of growth. And it took the experiences of Brazil and it took the experience of Norway, of Nigeria, of Russia, so it's technically pretty well integrated. It also attends the cancer, the problematic culture about corruption that is not a privative to Mexico, it's most everywhere. But this reform pretends to take out any signs of corruption from within. Examples: the board of directors on Pemex or CFE. It used to have 4 members of the union and only 5 members of government. And they colluded many times. So the union members were kicked out, as I tried to do back in the 2006 administration. I presented that change. Unfortunately, again, Congress blocked it, but it finally happened. Same thing happens with the commissioners, the presidents of the commissions, and the board in each of the commissions. There is academy there, there is private sector there to look after things that happen. And there is volunteers like myself that decided to participate on the operating of the reform to make sure that it has a successful landing, more so to make sure that corruption is eradicated. So in that sense, it's also a pretty good, solid reform. Now, when all of these things, good things happen to Mexico, then appears the bucket of cold water and ice, the drop in the prices. And everybody was, I'm surprised and not knowing what to do. But in the first 2, 3, up to 6 months, everybody adjusted to the new circumstance, beginning with the government. The government has to play a very delicate role. On one side, we have the left, we have the socialists pressing and pressing, questioning why this reform was done, why they say it's going to be privatized, why don't we keep it as 100% property and control of government. And on the other side, you have those that take advantage, also those extreme, greedy corporations or people ready to make profit wherever they can, and not to think like social, responsible corporations. So this is the delicate balance where they're moving. Maybe government started with a period of high prices, more inclined to satisfy the left in the sense that if the oil was going to be privatized, that it would be under great, good conditions of income for government and for Mexican people. But now, when prices dropped, then it became not so enthusiastic, the investment coming from abroad. It slowed down. So government, fortunately, smartly adapted. And as you see, 12 new changes have been done in the last 3 months to put a more profound incentive to make it more attractive, to reduce bureaucracy, to reduce red tape. And from the first round to this other round, the latest one, things completely changed. So now we're on the way. Power, electricity is moving very fast because that sector was modernized in advance of what Pemex is doing today. So right now there's intense activity, not only on putting together projects of power of all kinds, sustainable, non-sustainable, green, non-green, every kind of power generating is being already not only planned, but it's already being a lot of executions, a lot of companies are being built to generate power. The new or non-existent before brokerage on power, on gas, companies are being formed and are moving pretty fast. And in this respect, I have to say, and I'm sorry that it is a personal example, but I was invited and decided to join a investment fund which exclusively is dedicated to fund energy projects by a very young guy, 29 years old, and to my surprise, he's been extremely successful. We went to all the places where money is available, sources of capital and investment are most everywhere in the world, big amounts, but you need to bring two things. One is a project, a solid project, and number two, a team. And look at Carlos Morales, just him, maybe the most knowledgeable oil executive that worked for Pemex for years and years, the expert in that corporation. He gets out and he's looked after for everybody. Everybody wants to invest in Carlos Morales because he is a professional, because he has a team ready to go. And by the way, EIM and Carlos Morales and Mr. Balleres, we are in a dialogue always looking for the best for Mexico. EIM had to look for its team both in Mexico and internationally, because our good, great talents from Mexico working for a monopoly and not having the opportunity to bring up their ideas, they just went out. They are all over the world. You find them in the Middle East, you find them in Texas, you find them in Oklahoma, real Mexican talents, but none of them is knowledgeable about the fracking, about the shale, about the horizontal drilling. We don't have that expertise, and we never worried about having it. So we're moving from a monopoly that is a bureaucracy, that in many ways is corrupt, that it's lost its technical capacity and its innovation capacities, into a new formula that I think everybody is going to win, everybody is going to enrich. The investors, the government, the Mexican people, and the big boat, the big ship of Pemex that is sinking now is going to flow back again by associating, by putting together projects with other associates. And why is this? Because when you run a monopoly, there's no management there. So we have lost our management capacity, and that management capacity is coming back through the new boards and the new balance of experts and talents in the board, and by also partnering with private sector, great talents on managing and great talents on technology. This is what is going to provoke this miracle in Mexico, and it will happen, believe me. One area where EIM, its founder, Franco, Handam, and myself, we have learned that fracking, that horizontal drilling, is an incredible source of not only oil and gas, but it's much more permanent than drilling vertically, because wells like Cantarell, maybe in a decade, they are off. There's no more oil there. And this horizontal drilling really is milking the cow permanently on fracking those rocks and getting the oil that is inside them. And some say that that resource is much closer to illimited resource, sustainable resource, than just extracting the oil from underground or from the deep waters of the Gulf of Mexico. Somebody publicly came with the idea that extracting a barrel of oil through fracking cost $50, 1 barrel. And that then it couldn't be possible to do business there because it cost you $50 and the price of the Mexican mix is 35, 36. You will be losing $15 on each barrel that you were extracted. That was an incredible information that is spread out. And Soviet Mexican authorities said, there's not going to be bidders, there's not going to be licitators if we open that round related to fracking. And after learning about the experience in Texas, number one, it would take in the past about a year to drill one horizontal well, and today it can be done in 6 days. In the past, it would take you years to develop a field and to put together all the infrastructure, all the services, all that you needed in the desert. And Texas did it. The investment in infrastructure starts benefiting the region way before you get the first barrel of oil out of the ground. So today, that can be done at a much lower cost than everybody thought it was. So I hear from here send a message to all authorities, to the Minister of Hacienda, to the Under Minister, Miguel Mesmacher, to the commissioners, to Pemex, and to everybody. Open that round, and you will have bidders, and very strong bidders ready to invest as much money as needed, and to build up that infrastructure and to scale it up so that others will come and come. This fund has as a member, as a partner now today, Audrey McClendon. He is the CEO today of American Energy Partners. He was the CEO of Chesapeake. And he knows about fracking. And he has done incredible things. He just acquired 2 million hectares in Australia to go and frack there and get oil there. So I think that this reform is very attractive, but is for audacious people, people that is willing to take a risk, people that is willing to invest its money, and people that is willing to bridge between our two nations and put together projects that are going to be successful. Finally, and then we go to dialogue or questions, in Central Fox, the Presidential Library, one of the 3 foundations that Matt and I take care of, with over 3,000 donors, very generous donors. It's not our money that we have there. It's donors' money. We, the family, donated the property, which is 10 hectares where the Presidential Library was built. We donated the family home to be part of the foundation to generate the funds that the foundation needs for its programs. And we just, a month ago, we ran our second experience with a forum called CTech, which is a blend of culture, information technologies, engines, meaning automotive and aerospace, and knowledge. Sort of a copy from Austin that does this blends very successful. And of course, we invited the CEOs, owners of the 3 engines that move Mexican economy, very powerful engines. One is energy, of course. Second one is technology, of course, where Mexico is overlapping its intense and an immense capacity of manufacturing to overlap now with the knowledge economy, with information technologies. And third sector is engines or manufacturing and automobile. As you know, this sector in manufacturing in Mexico has become the place because of NAFTA and because we just happen to be very competitive today with the logistics of crossing the border in a few minutes. or flying into Mexico or back to the States in a couple of hours, or instead of going to China, 18 hours, to India, 18 hours, 15,000, 20,000 cost of a ticket compared to 1,500 cost of a ticket going to Mexico. So this is giving us very opportune strategic capacities and competitiveness that we must take advantage of. And so Mexico is manufacturing very intense. Imagine that we can provide that energy abundantly and at competitive prices to this mammoth manufacturing structure that Mexico has through gasoducts, through production of gas and oil within Mexico, through lowering the prices, opening the markets, as it will happen as of next January. Now everybody in Mexico will be able to import gasoline. And that move, just that single move, is absolutely of high impact to the economy. And so opportunities are there, great opportunities. And this is what we brought in CITEC about, that these three sectors network, dialogue among each other, make synergy between each one of them. And then what is most important in Mexico, and I really appreciate what George P. is doing here, putting together the public sector and the private sector. It's incredible, the divorce, how most of the entrepreneurs of our country, the businessmen, sit on the back seat of the car and just let themselves be taken by the chauffeur to wherever he wants. And the more we do is forums to learn, where is President Peña going? Where is he taking me? When private sector should go on the front seat and should be part of the strategy and part of the plan. And that's what we have to get through forums like this, to sit down together as partners. And that's the best formula to mobilize the economy of one nation, having harmony between public sector and private sector. And this is what we try to do in CITEC. We're going to have our third CITEC next year, so you're all invited to come. We had there 1,500 top executives, CEOs of different companies within these three sectors. We had all the authorities, as you can imagine, on oil, on energy, on power, on Hacienda and finance, the authorities of the banks and the stock exchange, and of course also the important private sector. So with this, I am through. I had my lunch before, so don't worry about me. You can ask questions as much as you want, and I'll try to answer. So thank you very much and buen provecho. Gracias. Ándale, ándale, dicen aquí. Ándale, ándale.
My name is Roberto Prosperi, and I'm from Monterrey, Mexico, and I've been living here in this area from California to Baja California for 25 years already. Question, you as a former president of Mexico, what happened, what stopped you from getting rid of monopolies and open the Mexican market to new investors, new companies, and actually make a big change?
Let's not forget that I was minority government. So the House or our Congress was controlled by opposition, totally controlled on a 2-to-1 formula. It's not easy to move in a situation like that. And, but anyway, you try. And yes, I presented a fiscal reform which by the way was 15% sales tax to every product, 15% income tax for all corporations, large or small, 15 and 15. And that's promoting investment, that's promoting production, and getting your source of taxes from sales, consumer tax. And, but that reform, the energy reform, didn't go through. I guess it took some time to get the debate going, to wait until the Titanic, Pemex, was about to sink and losing money like hell, and indebted like, I guess, no other institution in the world, had to be rescued. And finally, Congress understood. But also, everybody in politics finds your own personal opposition and personal crazy people, like López Obrador. He delayed, and he's responsible for making Mexico and Mexican economy lose 18 years. Every single Mexican lost 18 years.
Thank you very much, President Fox. We've been talking during this forum a lot about binational cooperation. Where do you see what can U.S. business and what can the U.S. state governments and even federal government do to help this process, this mutually beneficial process of North American energy integration?
Yeah. Well, there are a couple of things that are going on. Number one, on the Mexican side, I remember in my administration that only 30% of Mexicans were bankable. Only 30% of Mexicans were bankable. The other 30% did not have access to money, either for consumers, as consumers, or for investing. So we came out with several programs. One was micro-lending, the other one was rescuing cooperativas and everything else. The other was transforming the system of transferences from Mexico that at that time, one hard-working, sweating Mexican here would make $100 to send to his family, and in the way, they would take away 30%. The family would receive 70%. We changed that, and we brought it down to less than 5%, the cost of transferences. But the whole idea was to make the country bankable, to have access to credits. Then Paco Gil, a brilliant guy that I really thank him for what he did to build that stability, that strong stability that the nation has even today. He also started to restructure the whole financial system, and he came with many changes in the law and with new institutions. But today, Mexico is extremely weak in providing money to its entrepreneurs. The families, the big families, take all the money. And there is not a structure of funds, for instance, hedge funds, capital investment funds. We begin to have some, but very few. So the idea of EIM and Franco is also to create a new culture, to establish in Mexico, from the banks to the users of money, many institutions in between. And one of them has to be these funds. And those funds have access to the big funds outside. First Reserve, which now is ready to invest together with EIM, has all the money in the world for oil investment, energy investment. Sovereign funds like Singapore and like many others have plenty of money also to invest. So what we need is the mechanisms in between to fund all startups, all entrepreneur efforts, all new companies, and basically all energy companies that there can be many, plenty of them, and they need access to money. So that restructuring is key, I think is crucial to do in Mexico. Here in every city you go, in San Diego, there might be 20 funds here to provide for those who want to build a home, to provide for those that want to start a business, to provide for technology, to provide for this. Silicon Valley, in Oakland, in San Francisco, maybe 100 or 200 or 300 funds. And we have no more than 5 in Mexico, all together. So that has to be restructured.
Presidente, ¿cómo está? Buenas tardes. Me da mucho gusto, primero, reconocerle la participación que tuvo. Número 2, reconocer en sus palabras que el gobierno mexicano va por muy buen camino, reconocer el trabajo que se está haciendo actualmente y, por supuesto, pues me da mucho más gusto saber que el enemigo en común es López Obrador, ¿no? Que no tiene que llegar, por supuesto, al gobierno. Mi pregunta es la siguiente. Vemos con mucho optimismo la reforma actual. ¿Podría estancarse esta reforma con las leyes secundarias? Esa es mi primordial y mayor preocupación. Actualmente las leyes secundarias están por aprobarse, por generar la idea real de cómo va a estar la operación de toda esta situación y, por supuesto, pues obviamente no podemos permitir que haya un estancamiento de otros 2 o 3 gobiernos para poder sacar adelante al país.
Okay, for those in English, the question is this secondary laws, so-called secondary laws. He's saying that they are not being issued and implemented, and that if that could refrain. Well, something is wrong with the information we both have. All the set of laws are already approved, not only the Constitution, but everything else. And now the administration of the law and the process of moving from a monopoly into an open market energy system in Mexico, you can imagine that's not peanuts. That's a big game that needs a lot of talent, because that monopoly was there for 100 years, and it was really sinking. So they have to be very smart. And all those structures are there. Now, to avoid corruption, unfortunately, you meet red tape, because you put so many restrictions and you try to control everything so that nobody can attempt to do corruption, that then it becomes quite complicated to move at the speed that you need to move. The authorities are showing flexibility on that, fortunately. They are not as stubborn as other of us have been, and so they are open to change, and that's pretty good. Now, about the administration, not everything I'm in agreement. There have been mistakes, severe mistakes. There have been great, good things like the reforms, and I just take the case of Iguala. When I came to be president, I was immediately informed, watch out for this normales. And they gave me 6 names of 6 normales out of the 20 that exist. And we had to put in intense supervision, intense control, so that they would not exploit. And this was one of them, this one, Ayotzinapa. I don't know why they didn't have the capacity to control in advance, to make sure that it would not happen what happened. So I think there, lo menos hubo descuidos, lo menos. Descuidos importantes. And the handling after, also a problem. The famous home, I think, was not cleanly done. And I have to say that, although I back up Presidente Peña, I think he's done very smart moves. I think he has a great team, and I think he's doing a great job. If you look at the economy is performing under very, very difficult times. And they took immediately steps to cut the budget. That's harmful for many people. That's something you don't want to do as president, but it's something that you have to do, being a responsible president. And that's what I learned from Paco Hill. I will claim, Paco, no la chingues, Paco. Déjame atender a los pobres, dame chance de que el presupuesto no se corte. Presidente, no, I will go back again. Paco, please look at the indigenous people, look at the poor people. We need programs for them. No. And if you insist, I resign. And that was his last word, so I withdrew. But it's so important discipline in the economy that we're enjoying yet that discipline that Paco Gil imposed. It didn't exist before that. And let me tell you a story. And with this, we might finish because it was last question. About 2 months ago, Ismael, the former governor of Durango, invited me to come to Mazatlan. And as you know, the highway between Mazatlan and Durango has been inaugurated 3 times. One by Calderon, second one by Calderon, not finished yet the highway, third by President Peña, and President Fox did not inaugurate what he budgeted. And the real truth is that I began that highway. We advanced only about 20% of it, but before leaving the administration, Paco was generous enough to put 20 billion pesos on a fideicomiso. And so that highway was finished with those 20 billion pesos that came from the 2000-2006 administration. He was very careful in that. He prepaid debt for 2 years in advance. So 2007 and 2008, Calderon didn't have to pay a penny on foreign debt. It was prepaid for 2 years. That kind of financial, fiscal administration is what you need in a country. And that pays off. That really pays off on the long term. Gracias.